Okay, hello and welcome to another expert interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine and Pipeliner CRM, and I'm delighted for the last interview of the year to be joined by Joanne Black. Hey, how you doing, Joanne?
Oh, fantastic. Happy 2017 and going into 18.
Absolutely, and obviously, Joanne's great, an author. No more cold calling. You can see the sign right behind her. A prolific writer and commentator. And what we were going to talk about today was why is it, as we know, this time of year, right? You're either in one of three places this time of year as a salesperson. You're either desperately trying to make up that last little bit on your quote so you can hit quota, so you're going to be working right up to midnight on the end of December, or you've beaten quota now and you're happy and you're splashing out on big presents for everybody, or you're in the spot where I think it's CSO Insights. What is it that they say about 53%, where you haven't made quota and this last couple of days ain't going to get you there unless the largest bluebird ever falls out of the sky. So let's talk about that large percentage of people who didn't make quota. John, why is it every year this problem that it doesn't seem to be getting any better about salespeople missing quota?
Well, that's a big question, Sean. But I think part of it is that we wait too late to look at business for this year and next year. I've always felt that Q4 is the 25% of the time to close business for the current year, 75% of the time to build business for next year. And a lot of time that's not happening. But one of the things that I see recurring, and this is a challenge, so it's not only they're not making quota this year, but sales leaders have told me that, yeah, Joanne, that's it. And my quota is increasing next year and I have fewer resources. It makes no sense. What is going on and how are they going to shift that 53% stat? And by the way, that stat has continued to go down year after year after year. So that means fewer and fewer people are making quota. And as sales leaders, we need to do something about it. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I mean, I did just pick up on that point about starting your business for next year in Q4, because let's face it, typically everybody is laser focused on closing out the year, and then quite often it's January sales kickoff meetings, around the country, and then you get your quota given to you on the last day. I mean, I worked in a company where they used to give it on, they'd have the whole sales team away for a week, parties and award ceremonies and training sessions and a big award ceremony on Friday night, and Saturday morning they give out the quotas for the next year. I know. And of course, you're right. You may have missed quota by 25% on this year, but then your quota's gone up by 5% on the original quota you had. So you started an interesting discussion on LinkedIn. And what were some of the reasons people were giving for this ongoing phenomena?
Well, I asked the question, and if you look at my profile, you'll see the conversation. I said, why is it that sales leaders are focusing more on technology as a panacea for this missing quota and not on developing the skills of their salespeople? So that is just this huge gap, and that's what everybody has seen. Oh, yeah. We'll just buy this technology, get this new technology, and everything will be fixed. Well, obviously, that's not happening. So I asked the question, why? And I got some very interesting comments. And several people said, and you may bristle at this, John, that it's easier for sales leaders to buy technology, because if it doesn't work, they can point fingers at the technology. Yep, not my fault, thank you. People aren't adopting it. It was great technology. Sorry. However, if we invest in our people and coach our people, well, that takes more time. Do I have the time? And, guess what? I'm going to be responsible if they then don't perform. So it's almost safer, to look at technology.
That's an
Yeah.
it's no it's an interesting point, and actually, I mean, I agree with you in many ways, because I think that oftentimes people use technology to solve fundamental problems, and as you say, if your salespeople are not well trained, right? If they're not, and they don't have good sales skills,
Yeah.
if you don't have a well-defined sales process, dynamic and well-defined sales process, technology is not going to even. I mean, we would even say ourselves with our own CRM. I mean, if you don't have a well-defined sales process, if you don't have your processes right in the company, technology, as great as it is, it ain't going to do that for you.
Well, that's right. And it comes down to the fact that technology is a great tool. I mean, none of us debate that,
Yeah.
but there's way too much of it. And if it doesn't increase our productivity, why bother? I've even had people tell me who sell technology that the only reason people should have it if it increases productivity.
Mm-hmm.
But skills are essential. So it's sales process is important, but the right KPIs are important.
Yep.
Building skills essential,
Mm-hmm.
and then having people practice and have that be reinforced and coached. That's how you shift behavior. I even had somebody write to me on LinkedIn a while back, and here's what he said. He said, Joanne, I have these KPIs for referrals. Nobody's asking.
Uh,
So, right. So I wrote back, well, no, of course they're not, because you can't have KPIs that sit there by themselves, right? You have to put in a process to change behavior. So that's key. There's another perception, I think, that technology is a quick fix,
mm,
right? And that building relationships and building skills takes longer.
yes.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of sales leaders who don't invest in the long game,
Mm-hmm.
right? They want it. It's the quick fix. It's microwave time. It's right now. We need to have it. Oh, and it's the other thing. Well, everybody else has it, so therefore I must have it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's really that the next bright shiny object is
Uh,
not what everybody else has.
You see, you've just hit on my. It's been my soapbox for a while. The shiny object syndrome, but also what you mentioned as well is I talk a lot about the shortcut culture, and that's what we exist in today.
Yeah.
It pervades our culture like nothing else. Like everything is shortcut, shortcut, shortcut. There's an easy way to get there, and hard work, to be honest, has I think. Taken a back seat in people's minds, and because of the ease of which you can create tools nowadays, I mean, people are pumping out sales
Oh, yeah.
tools, and they look, and they're shiny toys, right? They look fantastic, they promise all these things, so people are running off to this technology, that technology, but as you say, the fundamentals take work and hard work to, and just like anything else, if you're going to be successful, you got to get the fundamentals right. But it seems, I wonder your perspective on this. It seems that a lot of people have abandoned the work on fundamentals.
I agree with you. And it's just everything. The pendulum is swung, and in this conversation on LinkedIn, somebody mentioned it that it swung way too far. We
Mm-hmm.
all know technology is a great tool, but the technology doesn't close business; people do.
Right.
And so my experience has been when the pendulum swings one way too far, then it starts coming back the other way, and that needs to happen. Now, I think that it's going to take some very strong sales leaders, to put that stake in the ground and say, that is just short term. That's not going to work. We need to play the long game. We know it's going to take longer. We need to build skills. We need to have a sales process. We need metrics. We need accountability. And building relationships takes time, but
Mm-hmm.
that's why business is closed,
Mm-hmm. And
right?
and held on to over time, right?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you totally. I mean, I think it's the fundamental skills, get your sales process right, and without sounding self-serving, is your CRM, one piece of technology, get that working for you, supporting the sales process, supporting the sales skills, and kind of ignore the noise. The rest of it, like if you just focus on a couple of things, you'll be much further ahead of everybody.
So I'd like to take you back a while. Obviously, I didn't start selling yesterday.
Sure.
Uh, so in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was in the corporate world, the way we learned about a company was you called up corporate communications and they actually mailed you an annual report. That's all the information you had, right? It was really simple. I mean, there was no internet. I mean, there was, but, people weren't using it that much. There wasn't social media. What did we do? We built relationships. We talked to people. I mean, at one point, I had no local clients at all. So I had to get on a plane and see people and actually have a conversation with them. And we did phenomenally well. And that has been forgotten today. I mean, video is great. But I think what's happened is that many salespeople hide behind technology.
Right.
And you and I live in California, and I think because of where we live, I've had salespeople say to me, oh, Joanne, I don't need to talk to anybody, right? Just typing away. And one of my sales VPs wrote to her team and said, did you ever close business over email? We need to have conversations. And that's a huge differentiator today.
Yeah. And I think, it's interesting because for sure there's, and some of the business we do is, a lot of it is done over web meetings like this. I think you can, and I think this is something that actually I was talking with our CEO and founder Nicholas Kimna the other day, and we were talking about the thing that, nobody is really helping to teach people how to build real relationships and how to communicate really well in an environment like we are now, video, where we're not face to face or whatever. But you still have to use the opportunity to build relationships, as you were saying, and use it rather than using it as, well, this is just a quick, easy way of us communicating. I mean, it's almost like you have to do more. You have to invest more in the medium in order to bring it alive.
Well, and that's why referrals are so great. I mean, that's my platform.
Sure.
And those of us who build relationships, and referrals are built on trust and relationships, we get meetings, right? So you introduce me to someone, I've got the meeting. And I don't have competition. I close business 70% of the time, but we have to build a relationship to do that, because referrals are built on reputation and trust. And smart salespeople know that. And so the pendulum, again, needs to swing back to, we have to have conversations. Now, that begs the question, do salespeople have the requisite skills to have those conversations? Right?
And I think that gets back, as we said, to the fundamental point. And let's face it, good sales value creating conversations, whether they're done face to face or whether they're done virtually, require an amount of skill and investment in developing that skill, right? Somebody mentioned the other day, I think it was on I was doing a panel discussion where people mentioned that role playing, like sales managers and sales, they're not role playing enough with their salespeople. They're not actually, spending the time developing those skills.
Yeah. And nobody likes to role play, right? It feels weird. I mean, I'm one. No, and I think part of it is because we're role playing in front of our peers. We don't want to feel stupid. I mean, it's all those things, but we all know that builds skills as well as practice.
Yes.
None of us like to practice, but that's what makes us good at anything. And I'm really amazed that we practice in our personal lives, don't we? I mean, if we're a runner, right? We practice. If we're at the gym, how much more weight do we need to lift or whatever? Whatever skill, look at any professional athlete. They practice. They have coaches, many of them. Yet we don't translate that to our professional lives. I think it comes back to the point where, again, microwave time. I need it now. Yeah. And then we put pressure on salespeople to do things where they don't have the skills. and they're leaving, right?
Yeah,
They're
and
leaving.
the churn, as we know, the churn is tremendous, and the sales manager churn's even worse. Well, it's a year and a half. The average tenure of a sales manager, because of all the things we're talking about, because of the short-term focus, because of the pressure. But it is a fascinating point you raised, though, right? So, I mean, if most people were honest, right, they'd say whatever their hobby is, you're correct. They invest a lot of time in practicing and trying to get better at it. It may bring them a lot of pleasure and joy. It doesn't bring them any economic benefit. But the thing that you do for a living, you wing it, right?
Right. So that's your point about getting back to the fundamentals.
Mhm.
And it's also accountability. I kid around a lot, but
Sure.
I really am serious that why do we need a trainer at the gym?
Hmm.
All the equipment's there, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, sure.
Well, right. So we paid for the trainer. We're accountable. We need to show up.
Hmm.
And the trainer actually pushes us, right? Refines our skills, um, pushes us to the next thing. And that's what has to happen in sales organizations today. And it's not. So, John, I really think it's going to take time. It's going to take I'm going to calling this brave sales leaders to push back and say, we need to play the long game. And
Hmm.
here's what needs to happen. Because otherwise, nothing else is going to change. And my team will continue to miss quota, which
Hmm.
means I'm probably going to be out of a job.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
everybody's going to be unhappy, right? There's no winners in that scenario.
No, there aren't.
So, what were there any other interesting comments that you got on your LinkedIn question?
Everybody repeated that people do business with people.
Hmm.
I mean, that came up all the time. And some people just gave platitudes. And then I wrote back and said, well, yeah, I understand, but what do you think? How do you think we should solve this?
Hmm.
And that's tougher to come up with because it's changing the mindset. And also, as sales leaders, it depends who we report to if we can really make those changes. We need to make the business case for the change. And many times it's a CEO. So, it becomes a complex problem.
Hmm.
People also said that the feeling was there's a greater ROI with technology. Yeah, could
Could
be,
be.
could be. But we need to have the conversation. If what we're doing now isn't working, what in fact do we need to do to affect change?
Hmm.
And those conversations must happen.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to, again, I say it's going to be brave sales leaders who are willing to do that. And then what happens if the answer is no?
Yeah.
Are they willing to leave?
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
So, it becomes then a very personal conversation because our reputation and our jobs are on the line if we step outside of that box.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree, and I think there the ROI on investing in sales skills, and that is it is there. You can measure it. When I worked at when I ran Huthwaite and Spin Selling, we were able to show people how you can have leading indicators of change. It's things like you can look at how many call plans people do as and how they lead to success as opposed to people who don't. So there's lots of things that you can do, and it's just a question of doing it. You're right, with technology, it's a little bit easier, obviously, but it's not impossible with the skills and the behavior side either. It just requires you to define them, and then as we say, as you mentioned earlier, that great thing about KPIs that are never looked at, right, is actually look at them and review them.
Well, and you have to make sure that they're matching to the behaviors and the skills that people have or you
Right,
want them to have. I
exactly.
mean, I guess the question, so I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes.
So, what would happen if, so you're playing the long game
Hmm.
or you want to play the long game? So, say you're in a situation as a sales leader where, most of your team isn't making quota, that quota's increased for the next year, and you have fewer resources. So, and then you go and you say to your CEO, here's what I want to do. And your CEO says to you, well, that's not going to work. You need to continue doing what you're doing. then what's your choice? What do you do?
Yeah, I think at that stage, I think it comes back to either you have the strength of your convictions and you say this is how I believe it's going to happen, or and you're you have again enough inner strength to be able to say, well, that's not going to succeed, so either there's room for compromise, or as you said before, I have to go somewhere where my ideas would be listened to. Because I mean, at the end of the day, doesn't it, if you sign up for something that you know is destined to fail, there's no way you're going to be able to, I mean, you're going to project that ultimately.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
So you either have to leave or wait to be fired, one of the two.
Exactly, yeah. Depends what the package that they normally give to people who are being fired. Whether you want to disperse people who just wants to sit it out and take the fire package, or whether you want to proactively move ahead. But I agree with you. It's not and I know we're laughing. I mean, I know it's not an easy position for anybody to be in, but there does come a point in time where repeating mistakes and repeating failures and knowing that you're going to fail. I mean, it's no fun for anyone, is it?
Well, it's no fun, but as sales leaders, if we want that change, we need to make the business case.
Mm-hmm.
So in several situations with clients, I have done that. Here's the math. Let's do the math. If you do X, you'll get Y return.
Right.
And so we need to do that, because we can't, successful companies can't rely on only 50%, 53% of their team making quota. That's a recipe for failure.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can't be, we need to change. It can't be specifically, here's what we need to do. Here's the plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been a great conversation, Joanne. I mean, I can't believe we've gone over the time. It's even better. I always love when you go over time, because it means the conversation was that good. So just before we go, could you just take a moment to tell the viewers and listeners a little bit more about yourself, how they can learn more about you and contact you?
Yes. So referral selling is my passion. And the reason it solves these huge business problems that my clients have. Every sales team has. So how do I get meetings at the right level? How do I get more qualified leads in my pipeline? Those are huge issues that sales teams face. Well, referral selling addresses those and more, because when you get an introduction, you get every meeting. Mm-hmm. And and everything's qualified. Because you're introduced to the people you want to meet. And so I'm always glad to offer referral tips. My website is nomorecoldcalling.com. And please invite me to connect with you on LinkedIn with a personal message. Mm-hmm. Tell me you've heard this conversation, I should say, with John, and invite me to connect, and we'll begin a conversation about referral selling. It will transform the way you work. Yeah. And as you know, I like to have conversations. So if you'd like to chat, my area code is 415-461-8763, and that's Pacific time. So I think 2018 will be the year of referral selling.
Yeah, I don't doubt it, Joanne, because as I know that you've been the voice of this, it's still the most underutilized sales tactic.
It is, and that needs to change so we make quota, right, John?
Yeah, exactly. All right, listen, thanks, Joanne. It's been a great interview. Look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks.